Welcome back into CyHawk Talk here on a Wednesday. Ben Hutchens joining me across the Zoom call like normal, but we're doing it a day earlier than we normally do. Are you thrown off at all, Ben, by the advanced schedule?
No, not quite. I think my timing and my circadian rhythm will get thrown off when I get up at 5 or 5:30 to leave to Kansas City to go to Big 12 basketball men's media day, which is of course why we're recorded a day early. But no, I'm good for right now. But don't ask me that same thing tomorrow morning.
Well, hopefully it's an easy drive, uneventful, and there's no weather. I know there are some thunderstorms over in the Iowa City area today, so hopefully none of that along your route. Let's go ahead and talk about what people are here for. We're not weathermen, so they're not asking us about the weather. Let's chat a little bit about Iowa State's bye week, Iowa's upcoming game against Northwestern.
Yeah, Ethan, I'm really curious. Everything's kind of gung ho and well and good in Cyclone land. Entering the bye week with a winning streak alive. What's the vibes like in Iowa City with the Iowa Hawkeyes this week? I know you went to football. A lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it just like normal, you lose, the sky is falling, you win. Uh, Life is good, and that's kind of what Ferentz pointed out. Kirk Ferentz pointed out today when we asked him about kind of the quarterback situation. He said, when we win, last week when we won, I didn't get any questions about the quarterback situation, and now we lost, and so I'm getting peppered with them. But I think that has a lot to do with the success level relative that the quarterbacks have had when they've been in the game throughout the year, not just because there was a loss on Saturday. I think it's punctuated, it's emphasized, it's highlighted by the loss. Cade McNamara struggling in that loss. But I think that was always kind of brewing in the background last week. So he pointed it out, and I thought it was just kind of a funny coincidence. I don't think it's necessarily something that's brand new. It's we're just gonna wait until after a loss to ask those questions, because you're not gonna ask them after a win. Why would you change something after a win? Well, after a loss is when you make changes. And I'm kind of starting to think of it. Maybe there's a possibility. We went from like no shot to slight chance of seeing Brendan Sullivan in the future.
There we go. I know when we last talked, you said I'm not seeing any signs. What signs did you see or pick up on that maybe made you think otherwise?
Let me find the quote here. Okay,
Gotta
so
be exact when you're talking
yes.
about
Yeah.
quarterbacks.
Well, I'm way over analyzing this and reading into it a little too much. But the question was, you said both Brendan and Cade are practicing well. Is there something specifically about Cade or Brendan that is causing, Cade to win the quarterback battle each week? And after saying that they both practice well, and the biggest thing is game experience for Cade, all that jazz, we get to the very end and he goes, "We'll keep an open mind, but I have confidence in both of them, quite frankly. And when Brendan gets an expanded role," and then he caught himself and said, "or if he gets an expanded role, I think he'll do well." You tell me if I'm crazy there, but I think that there's something there. Well, what are you reading from that quote, Ben?
I'm no psychologist, but that sounds like a Freudian slip where you say one thing and mean your mother, um,
Yeah,
as as I've heard it's put before.
certainly raised my eyebrows in the media room today on a Tuesday. It sounds like an expanded role's coming, and he tried a quick cover for himself. So I don't want to go crazy with it. That's why I'm only upgrading. Maybe that's what I should do for the rest of the year. Instead of a playoff-ometer, I should do a Brendan Sullivan-ometer, where we just gauge the likelihood of seeing him in meaningful snaps. But if that's what I'd been doing, we would have gone from off the chart to like barely charting, right at the very edge with like the puking, nauseous emoji. That's where we're on the Sullivanometer.
But the zombie emoji is no more for the Sullivanometer. Maybe
Correct.
he can kind of move his chances up a little bit. I know another guy, kind of in the headlines there is Jacob Gill, the wide receiver. Ethan, what's up with Jacob?
Well, he's the most veteran guy in that room. And even though he transferred in the summer, he's kind of taken a leadership role right away. But he did transfer from Northwestern and he transferred fairly late in the summer. So, still a lot of ties to the Wildcats, and that's who Iowa is playing this week. So we asked him if he'd talked about the game with any of his former teammates, and he said, "I'm going to save that for a little bit later in the week once I can figure out who's going to miss the game and who's going to be playing." So he was having a little bit of fun with it, but it sounds like he still has a lot of really solid relationships with his former teammates, and there will be some good reconnecting happening on the field. So I just wanted to promote that. He also spoke very highly of Northwestern's head coach. Said that he really did a good job coming in and stabilizing thing after Pat Fitzgerald's firing last year. So a lot of positive things to say. I think Iowa's happy that he's in town. We always hear positive things about him from Coach Ferentz, any of the other coaches for that matter. But sounds like it's going to be a nice little opportunity for him to see his former teammates.
Now, if there's one thing I know about Northwestern students, they can do some math. And I guess the Nebraska Cornhusker students can do some math too. You were digging into some numbers this week.
Yeah, so I've been complaining about the turnover efficiency for Iowa for the last three shows now. I think I've brought it up. It really became apparent to me against Ohio State, where they had a fumble and an interception recovery, fumble recovery and an interception. They also got a turnover on downs against the Buckeyes and turned those three opportunities into 0 points. And I kind of, like, well, that's how you upset a team like Ohio State, right? Is you score off of turnovers. Um, that's going to be the way you beat them is you play solid defense, you run the ball well, and you score off the turnovers. I said that before the game, and then Iowa went in and got nothing out of the turnovers, and that's what made me start paying attention to that. Against Washington, they got a fumble basically in the red zone right away and only came away with 3 points. So I really started to pay attention. Well, here we go again. You're in a tight game against Washington. It was close at the time. You needed to get a touchdown. You only had to go 30 yards. How do you not end in the end zone there? Well, I actually went and crunched the numbers, and I found that Iowa is well below average in the Big Ten in terms of turnover efficiency, to the point where they're only getting about 2 points for every turnover that they get. The defense is forcing more turnovers than they did last year. They're up almost 50% in that category, or more than 50% in that category, but they're not turning those turnovers into anything. So I talked with them today. Asked Coach Ferentz about it. Asked Cade about it. Asked Jacob about it. Just kind of asked them what does the offense need to do to get more out of its turnovers, and it sounds like it's not really something. I think I probably could have told you this, but it's not something that they can control. But it's certainly something that they're aware of, and so I'll have more on that coming out later this week with a story. But that's just kind of, I've done the math. I figured out relative to the rest of the Big Ten where Iowa stands with that, and my irritation is validated. I think because the hypothesis was proven true. Iowa is below average in turnover efficiency.
And I think that's such an interesting conundrum for a football team, Ethan, because that's the stat where it really translates into who wins and loses games. Coaches get fired if their turnover efficiency is like Iowa's right now. Not saying, of course, Ferentz is going to get fired. That'd be a crazy day. But like, you can't necessarily just practice that and fix it. It's kind of just a reflection of the entire team in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a symptom. Like the offense isn't good, so they're not scoring off of turnovers. So it's a way to kind of show that even more painfully, like make it even worse looking. Like even when they're getting short fields, even when they're getting these momentum changing plays, they're still not scoring. And so it's just a way to further emphasize how rough it's been for the offense this year. Obviously, I don't have infinite hours, or I would go and calculate where I was at exactly in the nation in terms of offensive efficiency. I'd probably go back to last year to figure out where they were as well. I don't have that kind of time, but I do know that my irritation was validated. And I'd also caution you because there's actually not a significant correlation. There is a positive correlation between turnover efficiency and winning, but there's not a significant positive correlation.
I stand corrected. I'll have to put in some work and go look at that myself. Now you got me thinking, what is Iowa State's turnover efficiency? They've definitely turned a lot of people over in the second half, especially. And um, I'm trying to think if the field position, all those things have been converting into points. So certainly something to think about there.
Well, it's a tricky stat to keep because you'll find that a lot of colleges don't make it very easy to find. So I was actually going back through play-by-plays and looking at the drive charts and figuring all that stuff out. And then also on top of that, they are counting the defensive touchdowns in that as well. So when they are telling you what it is, they're counting defensive touchdowns scored. And I didn't want to give the offense credit for Jamari Harris's pick six against Troy. So I had to go in and I had to do that for every team and figure out, how many of these were defensive touchdowns and do all that. So I made this data as specific as possible and as exclusionary as possible to really drill down to, how bad are they off of turnovers. And I would say what I found is significant, even though the winning percentage isn't necessarily affected by it.
Yeah, I would definitely say go check out that story on qctimes.com, even if it's just to validate Ethan's hours upon hours of box score scrolling.
Well,
I think
it would have been a little faster if I hadn't messed up halfway through last night, but
well, that's I guess where your Nebraska degree comes in. Northwestern kids wouldn't have done that. You found one more interesting note I thought about Northwestern, and just kind of a fun thing to mention on the pod.
yeah, well, we both do the what to watch for story each week on the matchups. You won't have one this week since Iowa State's on bye, but um, I was working on mine a little early this week, and I was clicking through trying to looking at PFF. I imagine you do the same thing, and just trying to figure out what players that don't necessarily have massive stats are going to be impactful in the game for Northwestern. We have a pretty good idea of who those people are for Iowa, but who are those people going to be for Northwestern? And I found defensive back Theron Johnson to be one of those players. He does have a lot of stats. I think he leads the Big Ten in passes defended, if I remember correctly. But when I was doing more research on him, I found that he was also from Indianapolis. Jay Higgins, Iowa's best defender, is from Indianapolis. So I was curious, did these guys ever match up on the gridiron in high school? The answer is no. But they did match up during Jay's junior year, Theron Johnson's sophomore year of basketball. And Theron didn't have any highlights on his Hudl film from that game, so I don't know if he got the better of Jay at any point. But Jay got a steal off of Theron. I'll throw it up on the screen so people can watch it. I just thought that was a funny joke. I was going to ask Jay about it today, but we didn't get him. So don't have any big nugget from Jay on this exceptional basketball play. But I thought it was an interesting connection between the two.
That's hilarious. It's a good thing. I mean, if they were playing Ole Miss or something, I know they have a basketball goal on the sidelines. So something to watch there. What's the best Hudl / and one mix of all time when you're talking high school?
A couple of years ago, Hudl released like the all name team, and Coldus Crawford was on it, and he was committed to Nebraska at the time. So I'm gonna have to go with that one. I think Nebraska had another guy on the team that year too, like Blaze Gunnerson, who's I believe is from Iowa. But that's my favorite Hudl tape of all time. But anytime you can get like this real serious music for a Hudl tape that isn't super exciting, like it's an offensive lineman and he's 6'5", going up against guys who are 5'10", and just absolutely steamrolling them. That Hudl tape is pretty good too.
I think I'm gonna put Tavon Austin's at one, kind of a chalk answer there, but Derrick Henry's something else too. They were showing that on the Monday night broadcast. Just minimum boys right there.
Tavon Austin, are you talking about the one with that is on YouTube that has the song? Yeah. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
All the guys do. Every guy you're in my age knows exactly what we're talking about there. And I guess we can get into some of my headlines with the Cyclones. Of course, it is that bye week. So I think that is a huge note, actually, for this Cyclone team that is really beat up. And they just, by the skin on their teeth, got through it and came back and beat UCF by 3 points. But it's kind of like the meme. We won, but at what cost? And The cost in this case was Benjamin Bramer got hurt, did not return. He was on crutches for the most of that game. And Carson Hansen, he scored 2 touchdowns to begin the game and didn't return after the third quarter. So Hansen, Matt Campbell kind of downplayed both of those injuries, which is usual with Matt Campbell. So we'll see how both of those guys look. Just judge them on what I saw. I think Hansen probably not as serious, but Benjamin Bramer is someone I'm going to be watching closely. And also the thing we've been talking about this entire season is with the linebackers. Iowa State has a chance to get some of those guys back and get healthy, which if the Iowa State defense has gotten its team to 7-0 with a kind of just pulling linebackers from the freshmen and, whatever kind of ranks they can have, I'd like to see this defense with its, healthy supply of linebackers back. So I think the bye week comes at a good time for the Cyclones.
And
Now,
if I know anything about my from my illustrious NCAA football 14 career, it's that whenever you go on bye and you're a ranked team who's been getting disrespected, you plummet in the rankings. Obviously, Iowa State getting a little disrespect in the latest AP poll. What impact do you feel the bye week might have on their poll momentum?
it's really interesting. It's something you absolutely have to be watching for as a Cyclone fan. Just in the other room, I was watching the college football playoff ranking show with Reese Davis and those people, and that's something to think about. Cyclone fans is right now the AP poll is kind of gospel, but in early November the AP poll is going to be irrelevant when the college football playoff ranking show comes out every week. So it'll be interesting to see where the Cyclones are in that after an idle week. I think it could help them if you get a couple losses in front of you, but it could also really hurt you. I think there's the national stuff to be watching for. I don't think either way it's going to be too drastic of a swing. Tough to punish a team or reward a team that much when they are idle. But the Big 12 standings could be different, Ethan. BYU plays UCF. Every Cyclone fan will tell you that the UCF Knights are no one to mess with. And K-State plays Kansas, which is, of course, a rivalry game, Sunflower Showdown. That's never easy, I don't think. So a chance that the two teams closest to Iowa State in the standings could maybe run into some difficulty on Saturday.
Did you see the theory that Kansas State and Iowa State could end up playing 4 games in a row against each other?
I saw that. I think I quote tweeted it LOL. And not because I was laughing at the research or something, but that's just so foreign of a concept. At high school, NFL, college, we've never ever seen that, but it could happen. Because right, help me if I'm wrong here, but last game of this regular season could potentially meet up in a Big 12 championship. If both of those teams are highly ranked and one of them wins the college football playoff, they could potentially meet in the first round of the college football playoff and then play in Ireland next year to open the season. How about that for a 4-game series?
Obviously, only the team that loses in the first round of the college football playoff would get the 4 games in a row against the other. But I think it's still incredible that it's possible at all.
Yeah, forget the World Series of baseball starting this week. I mean, let's just do a 4-game football series. See how that goes.
Well, the Brewers lost like a month ago, so I have forgotten that the World Series starts today.
Yeah, not a good week for small market fans.
No. Well, looking outside of football, you went to wrestling media day today. We're going to get an exceptional headline about it later, but what did you kind of learn from about the Cyclones in a wrestling crazy state?
Yeah, Ethan, I did make it out to wrestling media day today and talk with Coach Dresser and a bunch of the more senior guys. And I think the lineup, Dresser said, is going to be fluid throughout kind of into early November, like it was last year. He really feels like he has a deep team, of course, one that's coming off of a Big 12 championship. And the big overriding story, at least for the first part of this season, is going to be how the heck Iowa State replaces David Carr, the All-American national champion. And a bunch of guys could potentially be that kind of leader and that kind of factor for the Cyclones. Dresser said he's challenging a lot of different people to see who wants to step up and take that mantle. I don't know. One of the names I'll throw out for Cyclone wrestling fans is Christian Carroll. Of course, the Oklahoma State transfer, wrestling at 197. Haven't seen a lot of him even at Oklahoma State last year, but Dresser said on Christian Carroll's best day, he's as good as anybody in the country. So that's one of the things we talked about. It'll probably be online in a story this week is Christian Carroll. How does he find that consistency? That's going to be a story I'm watching out for Iowa State wrestling. And then also we had Big 12 Media Days kick off on Tuesday. Women Tuesday, guys on Wednesday. And I mean, as far as the time to be a Cyclone basketball fan, now's a great time. One interesting thing I drew from watching the media day was actually Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark going up there and talking a little football, of course, as you do when you're at this point in the season. And Brett pointed out, hey, Big 12 is on pace for 2 teams to get into the college football playoff. And he's technically right because BYU is number 11, which, if that in Iowa State were to, win out and play in the Big 12 championship, they would get 2 in. I'm not sure if it'll stay that way. I'm interested to see if this Big 12 disrespect kind of continues and if the Big 12 can kind of hold strong and hold serve and get those 2 teams into the college football playoff.
Well, as you know from the Futurama meme, technically correct is the best kind of correct. So I think that the Big 12 is probably capable of putting 2 teams in this year. It certainly seems like it's wide open enough across the board. We'll see what happens in the Big 10. Currently, 3 teams still ranked in the or still undefeated in the Big 10, and I'm sure the SEC will get its usual 6 teams in the playoff.
Ethan, you gave me too much confidence. I'm not familiar with that meme. I'm more of a Hypnotoad guy. I do know the Hypnotoad just from being around the TCU football program. So that's the only Futurama reference I can name for you.
The only reason I know this is Futurama is because I've seen the character before at like a random restaurant that was playing Futurama while I was there. I don't actually watch the show. I just happen to know that it's the scientist guy that is saying it. See, I don't even know his name.
Well, hey, between the 2 of us, people who don't watch the show, 2 references is pretty good. We should be appeasing our everybody's pop culture senses on the show today. It's time for a headline battle. You beat me last week, and I'm coming back for the crown. What you got with the Iowa Hawkeyes?
I don't know. I think this one's pretty good, but number 1, we have buttoning down. Tradition at Iowa, you hand out buttons at homecoming. They're collectible items. This is the 100th year of buttons. The first one was handed out in 1924, and I think that the Iowa Hawkeyes are going to button down during homecoming this week. The defense was shaky last week. They allowed the most rushing yards that they have all season. They allowed the 3rd most passing yards that they've allowed all season. It's, the sky's falling on defense. What's wrong with the Hawkeyes? Well, they're going to button it down. They're going to stop Northwestern. They're going to have a good showing, and all the concerns are going to be assuaged. They're going to button it down. What more can I say?
Button it down.
Number 2, parade of dimes. Homecoming parade. It's going to be a parade of dimes because this is the worst passing defense that Iowa's faced all year. I have Cade McNamara throwing I have the Iowa Hawkeyes quarterback throwing multiple passing touchdowns. That could be 1 from Brendan, 1 from Cade, 2 from Cade, 2 from Brendan. I don't know. Parade of dimes, multiple passing touchdowns for just the 3rd time this year is my prediction. Calling it now. This is not gambling advice, but I'm calling it right now. And then number 3, wishing for the West. We're not wishing for the best. We're just wishing for the West because, as we know, the Big Ten West was never the superior conference. But for the 10 years that the West existed, Northwestern, Iowa, that game determined who the West champion was 5 times. So half the years that the Big Ten West existed, whoever won the Northwestern Iowa game was the representative for the West in the Big Ten championship game. With the Big Ten title hopes dashed last week, Iowa's going to be wishing the West was back when they beat Northwestern this week.
Wishing for the West. Those are the Iowa headlines. For Iowa State, I have a couple football and one non-football, just in spirit of the bye week. And my first headline is, on the 7th win, they rested. Now, I'm not trying to make a blasphemous statement right there, but some people are calling this Iowa State team a team of destiny. And heck, why not? It kind of feels like that with the last second heroics from Kyle Conradi and against Iowa, and then Rocco Beck last week. I don't know. Something about this Iowa State team feels special. And on the 7th win, they get a rest. My second headline is the homecoming stretch begins. Of course, after the bye week, homecoming against Texas Tech. And it is the final stretch in what will be a kind of make or break. Like if Iowa State's going to have the best football season under Matt Campbell since 1938, then they have to finish this homecoming stretch well. And I think that Texas Tech game on homecoming will be winnable. And I expect another crazy atmosphere in Jack Trice for that. And Ethan, I'm going to close it out with a wrestling headline. What we talked about earlier, David Carr being absent. The headline is Carr with 2 R's, keys up for grabs. Who's going to be the next David Carr? Dresser tossed the keys up in the air. I wonder which Iowa State wrestler is going to reach out and take it. Pretty nice car. It's like a Lamborghini. So somebody's going to want that. You want that car. And it'll be interesting to see who takes the car for the Cyclones.
Certainly a car that Iowa State enjoyed while they had it. I know that he was kind of the gift that kept on giving for that wrestling program during his time. So I think that was some strong headline game from both of us today. Maybe a tie, maybe a draw.
I'm okay with that. We'll have to call it a grudge match next week.
Oh yeah, I'll have to pull out my Bible so I can be on your level next week.
Hey, there you go. Start quoting some verses on me, and then I'll have no choice but to give it to you.
Yeah, once I start, I was spitting today, but once I start, getting that divine,
Oh yeah,
the divine talk, then we're toast. Then you're toast.
King James version, I'm cooked. King James, it's over.
That'll do it for CyHawk Talk here on Wednesday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to the audio podcast, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate us on Spotify. Give us a great glowing review in the comments on YouTube, or continue purchasing the $1 subscription on quadcitytimes.com so you can listen to the show. Anyway, you're tuning in. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys on Sunday.